Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into one of the most fascinating chain reactions in human history. We often think of urbanization as this very modern phenomenon, something born completely out of the Industrial Revolution. But it's actually incredible to discover how a single, massive technological leap completely transformed ancient civilization on the Indian subcontinent thousands of years ago. We are going to explore exactly how everyday life evolved from scattered rural settlements into incredibly wealthy, globally connected cities.
So how exactly did a simple piece of iron change the fate of the Indian subcontinent forever? It's a profound question, right? We're going to look at what is essentially the ultimate domino effect. This is the story of how an everyday tool fundamentally altered the physical landscape, which then supercharged the food supply, which then completely reshaped human society and eventually birthed a network of global trade that stretched all the way to the Roman Empire.
Okay, let's lay out our roadmap for tracing this incredible chain reaction. First, we'll look at the Iron Revolution. Then, life in the villages. Next, the rise of thriving towns. After that, craftsmen and Shrinis. And finally, trade and ancient wealth.
To really wrap our heads around this transformation, we need to anchor ourselves in time. The widespread use of iron in the subcontinent kicks off roughly 3,000 years ago. Fast forward about 500 years, so around 2,500 years ago, and we see this massive spike in town development and the introduction of standardized currency. By 2,300 years ago, we get the vibrant Sangam literature documenting the era. And between 2,200 and 1,900 years ago, bustling international ports like Arikamedu are absolutely at their peak.
Section 1. The Iron Revolution. Forging a New World.
The adoption of iron tools was literally a game changer. Think about step 1, iron axes. Before iron, clearing dense forests to create livable and farmable land was painstakingly slow work. Iron axes made rapid expansion possible. Then, step 2, the iron plowshare. Unlike softer materials they used before, an iron plowshare could easily turn over heavy, clay-rich soil, which dramatically increased crop yields. And step 3, to support all these massive new fields, they developed extensive irrigation systems. We're talking tanks, canals, and artificial lakes. The end result? An unprecedented agricultural boom.
Which brings us to a really pivotal question for this entire explainer. What actually happens to a society when it suddenly has way more food than it can eat? Think about it for a second. When every single person is no longer required to farm just to survive, human potential is suddenly unlocked.
Part 2. Life in the Villages. The Social Domino.
Because farmers were producing this massive surplus, the very structure of society started to morph and specialize. We start seeing really distinct social hierarchies emerge. Whether you were up in the north or down in the Tamil region in the south, class divides became stark. Take the Grama Bojaka in the north, for example. This wasn't just a guy with a lot of land. This was a hereditary role of immense power. The Grama Bojaka collected taxes for the king, acted as a local judge, and even served as the police force. Below them were the smaller landowners, known as Grihapatis, and at the very bottom were the landless laborers who actually worked those massive fields. You see very similar power structures mirrored in the south with the Vellalar, Uzavar, and Adimai.
Now, you might be wondering, how on earth do we actually know so much about the social lives of these ancient people, especially down south? Well, we owe a massive debt to Sangam literature. These are incredible ancient Tamil texts composed and compiled by assemblies of poets in the city of Madurai roughly 2,300 years ago. These poems serve as this incredibly vivid literary window, letting us look directly into the everyday operations, the hierarchies, and the culture of those early southern villages.
Moving on to Section 3. Rise of thriving towns, the hubs of civilization.
Mathura is probably the ultimate example of this ancient urban boom. It wasn't just a place where people lived, it was a multifunctional powerhouse. It sat right at the intersection of two major trade routes, one running northwest to east, the other north to south. It was so politically important, it literally became the second capital of the Kushanas. But beyond politics, it was a massive production center for exceptionally fine sculptures and a deeply important religious hub for Buddhists, Jains, and the worship of Lord Krishna. Mathura really had it all.
But hey, urban living wasn't all high art and religion. You've got thousands of people living right on top of each other. Which brings us to the logistics of daily life. Enter the ringwells. Archaeologists have found these clever engineering marvels inside individual houses. They're literally rows of ceramic pots or rings stacked one on top of the other. While they definitely showcase some great early urban planning, they were primarily used as toilets, drains, and garbage dumps. So highly innovative, absolutely. But ancient city living was probably quite a smelly affair.
And this brilliantly illustrates how we piece ancient urban history together today.
Aside from digging up physical artifacts like ring wells, we have the Jatakas. These were stories composed by ordinary, everyday people, which were then written down and preserved by Buddhist monks. Along with some incredibly detailed accounts left behind by unknown Greek sailors, these tales give us a deeply human, vibrant picture of what it actually felt like to walk the streets of these chaotic and thriving cities.
Section 4. Craftsmen and Shrinis, the masters of trade.
Remember that agricultural surplus we talked about earlier? Well, it allowed thousands of people in these towns to completely dedicate their lives to arts, crafts, and manufacturing. And the skill level of these ancient artisans was absolutely staggering. A perfect example is the Northern Black polished ware. Guys, this wasn't just your run-of-the-mill clay pot. This was extremely fine, high-quality pottery produced in massive craft centers like Varanasi in the north and Madurai in the south. These cities became renowned manufacturing hubs, honestly not that different from Detroit for cars or Silicon Valley for tech today.
But think about the logistics here. How do you organize an entire city of highly specialized craftsmen? Well, you create a Shreni. Think of a Shreni as an ancient trade union, a vocational school, and a bank all rolled into one. They completely organized commerce. They provided training to new artisans, procured the raw materials, and distributed the finished goods. Wealthy men and women would even deposit their money with these Shrenis, acting as a massive financial engine for the local economies.
And that brings us to Section 5, Trade in Ancient Wealth, a Global Network.
Because all of this incredible local production absolutely didn't stay local. Let's take a trip down to the coastal settlement of Arikamidu, which flourished between 2,200 and 1,900 years ago. This place was a literal landing ground for global wealth. Archaeologists have uncovered a massive brick structure there that was almost certainly a warehouse. But what's truly mind-blowing is what they found inside it. We're talking tall, double-handled Roman amphorae used for liquids like wine, and stamped, red-glazed Aretine ware, which is pottery literally named after a city in Italy. Goods from the Mediterranean were flowing directly into the Indian subcontinent.
Now, you obviously can't run an international trade network of this massive scale on the honor system or a simple barter system. You need standardized money, and that is exactly why punch-marked coins emerged. Made primarily of silver and copper, these pieces were stamped with distinct designs rather than having faces engraved on them. They served as the standardized go-to currency of the realm for about 500 years, greasing the wheels of this massive commercial engine.
So, the crucial point to take away here is the number 80. Why 80? Well, archaeologists have recorded over 80 separate finds of Roman coin hoards, primarily down in South India. The Romans were paying for Indian exports, things like spices, precious stones, pearls, and fine textiles, with literal tons of gold and silver coins. The sheer scale of this wealth transfer was absolutely historic.
It's just incredible to step back and look at the big picture. We've traced this entire journey from just clearing some dense forests with a new iron axe to massive agricultural surpluses, the rise of strict social classes, booming cities, specialized craftsmen, and finally a global trade network importing Roman wine. It leaves us with a fascinating thought. If a single iron axe could spark a chain reaction that built a global trade network 3,000 years ago, what modern tools are sitting in our pockets right now, quietly building the empires of tomorrow? Thank you for joining this explainer, and keep exploring the incredible history that shapes our world.